We've got our dependable Rotus Adiri here to give us Africa Business Update. Rotus, over to you.
Good morning, Doctor. Just before we even get into things, very great conversation that you just had with Governor Obaseki of Edo State, His Excellency. I particularly like the fact that he kept harping on technology with regards to boosting education, with regards to healthcare. He said a lot of good things. Also, you quizzed him very well with respect to the memorandums of understanding that he's signed with the private sector. And he said some very good things about the industrial park, civil service reform, and the number of things he plans to do for the next 4 years in Edo State. So that was a very great in-depth interview with lots of touch points on the economy of Edo State and how to move things forward. So congratulations to him again. We start with the MPC meeting. The Monetary Policy Committee is meeting today. They're concluding their two-day meeting. Started yesterday, concludes today. If we look at the last meeting that took place in August, all parameters were unchanged. The monetary policy rate is at 12.5%. Cash reserve ratio is at 27.5%. Liquidity ratio is at 30%. But there's a number of things that the committee is going to have to look at with respect to the fact that, you know, the GDP contracted by 6.1% in the second quarter. Inflation is at 13.22%, and you have the MPC rate at 12.5%. So our sister publication this day spoke with a number of economists and analysts, and they were all expressing the same worry that the MPC has to look at the upwards trajectory of inflation. How do you attract foreign investments into the country when you've got the inflation rate higher than the monetary policy rate, the benchmark rate? Can they raise the rates to head off inflation? I don't know. A lot of the analysts that this day spoke to said they think things are going to remain where they are. If you increase the rates, you're increasing the cost of borrowing, you're constricting demand. So I think they'll probably keep things in place. Again, the central bank, federal government, they've done a number of things to try to stimulate aggregate demand, a number of things to support the economy, to blunt the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so it's expected that it's going to be steady as she goes. We've seen the same thing at the Bank of Japan. We've seen the same thing with the Bank of England. We've seen the same thing with the U.S. Federal Reserve. So they'll probably keep things where they are, but something has to be done with respect to the heading off inflation, which continues to rise, and how that affects the wider economy. So about 1 p.m. or so, we'll get a live broadcast from the central bank, of course, with the Serbian governor, Governor Mefele, letting us know what happens there. Another thing to discuss was a town hall. This is on power now. The Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, hosted a virtual town hall meeting yesterday. Now, they've been hosting these meetings in physical meetings for a while to engage the public, but because of COVID-19, they actually held this meeting. Here's a tweet where someone said that the NERC meeting has reached maximum capacity of 500. More people can't join. Now, he criticizes them for not paying for a Zoom premium service in order to accommodate more people. But I have to tell you, there's a particular gentleman that has to be praised here, and that's Mr. Nathan Shati, who is the Commissioner for Financial Services for the NERC. He was the one that moderated this town hall for close to 3 hours. I joined at 6 o'clock. I live a long way away, so I was in traffic listening to it like it was a podcast. And this went up until about almost 8:30, 8:45, pushing 9 o'clock when I actually exited. He demonstrated professionalism. That's Mr. Nathan Shati. He demonstrated empathy. He demonstrated listening skills. He demonstrated everything you need to do to deal with or to manage irate customers, because the people who were on this call were extremely angry, and the discos were the subject of their ire. So a number of things that they talked about was the meter asset program and the fact that a lot of people don't have access to meters. Now, in defense of the discos, they did say that, look, there's a backlog. First of all, let's acknowledge the fact that there's a backlog of meters right now. Now, before you get a meter, you contact the disco first and say, hey, I want to get a meter. The disco now sends somebody to come and survey the electrical connections of your home, and then decide, okay, you make the payment. In 10 days, you get your meter. What the disco said, because the discos were on the call, he got the discos, Ikeja Electric, Echo, and also Ibadan. They were saying that, listen, a number of Nigerians are skipping the process of calling us, and they're just getting our account numbers and depositing the money for the meters into our accounts. And then they're saying, okay, I've paid for the meter, where is my meter? Because there are a number of people who said that they made payments in April. It is now September, they haven't gotten any meters. There's a huge backlog. So in their defense, and Mr. Shati, did say that, look, you have to follow the process. So they addressed that. They also addressed the issue of the estimated billing. Gentleman in London who has properties in Nigeria that he inherited from his father took over a property to find out there was a 350,000 naira bill from a prior tenant. There was another lady who bought a property. There was a 1 million naira bill from a prior tenant. So estimated billing is a big issue. Mr. Shatti said, hey, look, here's my email address. I will try to intervene for you. It was a masterclass in customer service. And another thing somebody else said is that these town hall meetings should no longer be physical. Because what they said was the prior physical meetings that NERC has had, they put stooges there. So they'll put somebody who is pretending to be a customer. They say some very nice things about the NERC. They say some very nice things about the discos, and then they guide the conversation that way. This was raw. This was real. They couldn't control who signed into the Zoom call. And I tell you, my first-hand experience of what he managed there, it was very well done. And this has to be extended. These kind of town halls with respect to our roads, with respect to infrastructure. The governors like Governor Basiki that just won his election, there has to be, constant engagement with Nigerians, because Nigerians want to vent and they want to express themselves with the word. And he was very patient. One more thing, he didn't tell anybody to calm down. I know, the governor of Lagos made something that term very popular with the little boy who went viral. But when you tell somebody to calm down when they're angry, it's like putting petrol on fire. So he listened to everyone. It was a very, very well-run town hall. Something else I want to move on to is the Women in Governance and Politics discussion that was held in our Arise TV Abuja studios yesterday. Now, this is politics, so of course I'm talking business here. However, there was the discussion centered on inclusion, right? Getting more women involved in governance and politics. By the way, I didn't even recognize this was the Abuja studio. I thought this was being held at like the Transcorp Hotel or something. It was so very well decorated. I actually found out later it was our Rise TV Abuja studios where this took place. So if you think about, I actually started thinking about unemployment and the labor force, yeah? So there's a tweet here from a reporter for Bloomberg, and she was talking about Shinzo Abe, who has just left power due to health concerns in Japan. Yoshihide Suga is now the new Prime Minister of Japan. If you take a look at her tweet, I think her name is that's the tweet. So Marika Katanuma. She said Abe wanted more women to work, and they did so. The female labor force reached a milestone of 30 million. Participation rate surged to 71%. Topping that of US and Europe. So, is he leaving behind a more gender-equal Japan? I want you to assess. There's a whole thread she went into, but she was talking about the labor participation rate for women in Japan, and also how many more women are included as far as labor is concerned and employment. Let's look at Nigeria now. If you look at our working age population, as far as Q2 2020 is concerned, 160 million. Women make up more of that. Women, though, have less of the labor participation rate for women is less than men, but unemployment is higher, 31% to 22%. Also, underemployment is higher. So, while the focus on the women in governance and politics, very well, solid discussion, it made me think about getting more women in the workforce. We've had on the Global Business Report folks that have been in charge of trying to get more women at board positions at publicly traded companies. So it was, looking at that conversation for politics and governance made me want to streamline it into us having all these conversations for the labor force and employment and so on and so forth. So that's our African business update.
Well, the big challenge that we face with regard to your last topic is gender discrimination. Yes. You must know, of course, that women in Nigeria, in certain kinds of work, they are grossly discriminated against, either in terms of payment, parity, in terms of salaries, and also in terms of the rights of women. There are state establishments where pregnant women are not given work. And there are companies in Nigeria, there are institutions where women are discriminated against as to whether they have their own reproductive rights. Now, beyond that also, women need to take permission from their husbands to be able to do certain things here in Nigeria. And many of these things are, codified into law. There's also the law against rape, which is, targeted at women, which makes things difficult for women until we had the Violence Against Persons Act, which came up to correct some of those things. So definitely there will be need for constitutional amendment with regard to gender rights from Chapter 2 to other sections of that constitution. Even the language of the Nigerian constitution is not gender blind, it's not gender neutral. It was a constitution put together by men. And so the language is masculine. The spirit and the letter is masculine in many respects. So that must have been an interesting conversation. As for meter, well, I don't know why the discos were targeted at that particular forum, because the discos are not the ones providing the meters directly. There is this group called the Meter Access Providers. Now, the president says there will be massive metering. I think 35% duty for about a year was also reduced on the importation of meters. So if you talk to the stakeholders within the disco community, they will tell you that, why are you blaming them? You know, that they have, government has appointed meter access providers, that they are the ones to be blamed. But where the two of them are guilty is that the quality of service remains poor. Metering has not necessarily translated into quality service. Now, we should also investigate the quality of those meters that they are bringing. 5-6 years ago, they brought better meters. These new meters that they are bringing, there is no guarantee that they work well. I know many people whose meters went up in flames. And it's not, and they will not replace those meters for you. You will be required to pay afresh. So these are the issues, and the people who were angry, yes, they have every reason to be angry, but we need to interrogate this. I know people who say they even prefer estimated billing. With the increase in electricity tariffs, these meters have become kalos, as Nigerians call them, lottery machines. Right. You put in 10,000 naira, before you know what's happening, there's no light anymore. And they will give many families hypertension because of the quality of service that they are providing and the kind of extortionist tendency that we are seeing with these kalo meters.
I couldn't have put it any better myself.
Very quickly, the meter, a couple of the meter asset providers were actually at the forum as well. Mojek and I think I can't remember the name of the other brand, but they were there as well. They were represented at the forum as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to talk more about inclusion of women in the workspace, but we can't take that because of time. We'll go for a quick break. We'll come back, and I'm sure Aaron will be ready for us by then. All right, welcome still to Rising's channel right here. So for updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Aaron Akirejola, the Barra, does the job so well, I think he's got a vaccine for us already.
I would wish, I would literally wish we could actually have that news where that day we'll actually come, where we'll actually announce that there is a vaccine for COVID-19. But we'll be talking about that particular topic in a moment. But before, okay, since we're there, let's actually just even kick it off from there. And that's the fact that COVAX, talking about the alliance, the global alliance for the distribution of COVID vaccines when they actually arrive, have been speaking up, and they've actually said that at the moment, over 158 countries have signed up to that particular alliance. Before we come to this, it must be noted that the United States and China, some of the most boisterous economies in the world, literally the most boisterous economies in the world, are actually missing from that particular list, which is very worrisome, understanding that the United States, with Donald Trump always hitting at America first, and billions of dollars being distributed to several pharmaceuticals to get doses of vaccines. They seem to be okay, which the WHO are frowning on. And China, where the whole virus started from, we should have expected them to be part of this particular alliance. Remember, China, more than any other country in the world, have more candidates of a vaccine in the race as we speak, well over 13 and counting. And we should have been expecting China to be in this particular race, but no. The WHO still claim they are still talking with China. But let's see how it goes. Now, going to that particular slide that actually explains this particular COVAX and different countries in different particular states. There are those that have actually agreed to the commitment state. About 36 countries have actually given some sort of commitment to this particular COVAX facility and confirmation of intent to participate. Well over 70 countries have also participated in that. And then the eligible economies, those economies, they might not be boisterous enough to participate in this or probably shell out money to this COVAX facility. But certainly because of the all-inclusiveness of this particular one, they are also involved. That's where Nigeria actually falls into the low-income countries. That's where Nigeria actually falls into in that particular one. Now, the WHO, alongside Gavi, talking about the vaccine initiative, and the rest of them are trying to put together and ensure that there's equitable distribution of a vaccine when we get one. And they are claiming that they should be able to put together about 2 billion vaccines And before the year 2021 ends, there should be global distribution of them, of course, to vulnerable and also health workers, which is very, very paramount. Moving away from that, let's actually talk about seroprevalence, because here in Nigeria, yesterday we were speaking about the fact that Nigeria has actually, we are not doing any tests, and that is what the PTF yesterday actually hinted on, that Nigerians are not tested. 2 days ago, they said only 11 states submitted samples, and there are 36. That was what Boss Mustafa was actually lamenting, and which is really, really sad, because we're seeing the numbers actually go low, and not because anything special is actually happening, but just because we're doing little testing at the moment. But yesterday, Dr. Ekwazu, talking about the boss of the NCDC, has actually spoken that they will start some zero prevalence survey around the country. 4 places are being earmarked. Now, for those, if they can help us out with the slides there, now zero prevalence simply means you're just testing for the antibodies which are responsible for the SARS-CoV-2, talking about the virus responsible for COVID-19. So if you have COVID-19, it takes 1 to 3 weeks for the body to begin to kick in with some antibodies. And that is what that particular test, the serology or antibodies test, would actually do. So 4 states have been earmarked, Lagos being the epicenter. We've seen quite a lot of numbers coming from the Abuja-Nasarawa region. So Nasarawa has been chosen, Gombe and Enugu states. So they'll be testing those. Now, moving down to the next slide, actually explain, because what this zero prevalence survey actually does is to ensure that not everybody can be tested. So they will just pick it and use that as an estimation, so to speak. So we're still looking out to see what is the actual number of those that have been infected with COVID-19. Because you and I know this, we've been speaking about the fact that there's been little testing done, and also underreporting, also heavily done here in Nigeria and even across the world. So this would actually give us an idea, and I hope this data can be put into good use in helping map out so many things, especially when we even get a vaccine. So now, moving away from that, quickly to the UK, and a lot is actually happening in the UK, and as it stands right now, Boris Johnson will be addressing the nation later on today, and they've actually spoken that now restaurants, pubs, and hospitality venues will not be allowed to operate after 10 p.m. Valence has been speaking, rather, and he's actually come out and said that if the UK continue in this particular trajectory, that before mid-October, they will be recording as much as 50,000 cases a day. And maybe before the end of the year, another extra 200 deaths might be added to the current counts at the moment. Now, since we're talking about current count, let's look at the UK and see the rise in projection. Now, you can actually see there, so far so good, 398,625 are the reported number of cases. Yesterday alone, 4,368. You can see the graph there. The graph is literally rising. And we are seeing a 14-day change, plus 93% in the last 14 days has been added to that particular number, which is very scary. You can also see the deaths, 41,788. Just yesterday alone, the numbers that actually came in were 11. And when you look at in a 14-day change, that's up by 185%. So it's really scary to those out there who are watching these figures, and those that are criticizing the government, especially the UK government, has come under serious flack for how they've handled COVID-19. And they are claiming that with flu coming into the winter coming in, which means that flu would also be coming back, then they are even fearful that these things might even go out of the roof. Moving on to the next slide now, this actually even helps explain it even further, because we are looking at this. There were a major dip and flattening of the curve sometime between June to August. As we started getting into mid-August, cases started rising, and we are seeing it go up and up. Some are saying that the second wave hasn't started. Some are saying they're in the last phase of this first wave. Whichever the case it may be, we are beginning to see numbers actually rise. That is almost getting close to what we saw sometime in May. And that is quite fearful. Although the deaths are down, as we move on to the next one, the deaths are still going down. But nevertheless, Nevertheless, the UK needs to be on serious red alert because, as a matter of fact, they've even moved into alert level 4 at the moment in the UK. So a lot has to be done. The Prime Minister will be meeting with several other First Ministers of Scotland and Wales, and let's see what comes out of that. But they will insist that the same protocols and the same safety protocols must be adhered to: washing of hands, safe distancing, and ensuring that those that maybe can stay off work and can work from home without disrupting their major work will be advised to stay at home. So that is what is really actually happening. Now, still moving on, before we just come there, because we're looking at several other cases now. We've seen a major sharp rise in cases, and they are still talking about rampant testing is not still being done in the UK, and underreporting is heavy here in the UK in terms of numbers that are coming back. And if the numbers actually do come back as it should be, then maybe these numbers will be higher than what we're actually seeing right about now.
Well, Aaron, two things quickly. First, on the plan to map the seroprevalence of COVID-19 in Nigeria, I think we should also commend the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that are providing the support, the financial and the logistics support for this. Well, I'm not a scientist. I've not been monitoring COVID-19 the way you've been doing. But if we're going to test randomly to check serology, I don't know how representative Gombe, Nasarawa, and Enugu, and Lagos are. Lagos, yes, the epicenter for a while before Plateau State took over. But I'm sure Dr. Ihekwazu and his team will have their reasons for taking, for choosing these 4 states. Now, on the COVAX alliance, I think China and the United States not signing up to that 156 nation alliance that we have now will seem to speak to some kind of selfishness on their part. President Trump says the U.S. has entered into bilateral agreements with regard to the vaccine, and that's what they will rely on. But I think what is the big takeaway for me is the point repeatedly made by the WHO Director General, Dr. Ghebreyesus, when he calls for global solidarity. And I quote him, he says, this is not just the right thing to do, it is the smart thing to do. Yes. And I'm quoting him directly. And his whole point is that COVID-19, if it has taught us any lesson, it shows that we are all interdependent. Yes. What happens in one part of the world can affect another part of the world. And no country should hide under COVID nationalism and say, well, we can take care of ourselves. We don't need to worry about other people. Because the lesson of it, of course, is that the COVAX alliance is to help vulnerable countries to make sure that they also have access, whether they have the resources or not, to the 2 billion vaccine doses that Gavi Alliance and the WHO are looking at. And by the way, Nigeria is not a low-income country. It falls within the low-medium developing economic category.
All right. I mean, great one there. It just shows the selfishness of President Trump, I should say here. For him, it's all about the elections. Like you said, we are all affected by this. I mean, do you know how shocking COVID is? COVID is like the 3rd most treacherous event in American history. After the Second World War, the 1918 pandemic that killed over 600,000 people, and now this. Let me tell you how shocking it is. In the UK, the last time I used to hear Cobra meetings was when there was a terrorist attack. But now, Boris Johnson is having a Cobra meeting for COVID. That's how serious. Alert level number 4. That's how serious this is. And we can't come together because of nationalism.
Well, to your word selfish, I would add folly of trying to isolate, if we're using COVID-19 terms in this kind of fashion. We all sink together or we swim together. And that's really the bottom line. It's so sad, such a failure of leadership, quite frankly.
Unfortunately, I'm even more shocked that China, who have the resources, they have the wherewithal, and also...
we need to go.
All right.
Aaron, we don't even talk about China. If you read Rage, you'll know more about China.